friends, let's read a book. Children of the Wind and Water. 5 stories about Native American children, written by Stephen Krinsky, illustrated by James Watling. Let's read one of these stories. Children of the Wind and Water. Introduction. For thousands of years, the only people who lived in North America were Native Americans, a group of people comprised of many different tribes. Each tribe developed particular skills as influenced by their environment, the rivers, the trees, the land, the sea. Over time, the scattered tribes developed different customs and traditions. Some things, though, they shared in common, especially regarding children. Childhood in every tribe was a mixture of work and play. Skills such as hunting and carving were not learned in schools, but were important parts of daily life. The following stories recreate some of the experiences of Native American children who lived almost 200 years ago, a time when their peoples still had much of North America to themselves. And while the world has greatly changed in the past few centuries, we can still learn from the Native American way of life. A Muskogee Trader. It was a lazy day on the river. Sweetwater was sitting in the front of the canoe. Her father was paddling in the back. The water was clear and still. There were no stray logs or hungry alligators in sight. Sweetwater was busy sorting through her shells. She had gathered them at the edge of the great sea. She remembered well the ocean breezes and the crashing waves and the seagulls swooping overhead. Someday, she hoped, she and her father would return there. They never stayed in one place very long, though. They were river traders, moving from village to village, peddling their goods. There were only the 2 of them now. Her mother had died of a snake bite the year before. Sweetwater's shells were mostly white. Some were twisted like knotted roots. Others were flat like dried leaves. Often she strung the best of them together into an armband. It was delicate work. Sweetwater had broken many shells learning how to poke a small hole through the middle. Up beyond the riverbank, 2 men were playing a game of chunky. A small crowd was watching. The men ran along the grass, chasing a flat, rolling stone. Each man then threw a pole at the spot where he thought the stone would stop. Both the crowd and the players came from an old village just downstream. At a small clearing around the next bend, Sweetwater and her father grounded their canoe. Then they dragged it out of the water. The canoe was their most valuable possession. It had been hollowed out from a fallen cypress tree. Some of the inside had been burned out. The rest had been chipped away with stones. News of the trader's arrival spread quickly. Several villagers approached with copper and pipestone. They hoped to trade them for something Sweetwater and her father had brought from far away. Sweetwater's father greeted everyone warmly. It was important to make the villagers feel welcome. Meanwhile, Sweetwater put out salt and dried fish to trade. She also found a good spot to display a shell armband she had finished the day before. Nobody acted quickly. There was much whispering and nodding. A trade was not to be hurried. Sweetwater noticed one villager with some fine deer skins slung over his shoulder. They were beautiful, but she knew better than to show any real interest yet. At first, the villager let others look ahead of him. Finally, he came closer. He picked up a dried fish and sniffed it, then he dropped it quickly. Sweetwater covered a smile with her hand. She didn't like dried fish either. The villager noticed the armband. The white shells were not things he could find in the woods. Her father had taught Sweetwater to watch faces carefully during a trade. The eyes were especially important. They could tell her when someone was truly ready to trade. The villager had such a look in his eyes now. Her father joined them. He explained that Sweetwater had made the armband from rare shells. The shells came from the Great Sea. To reach it would take a journey of many days. The villager offered a deerskin in trade. Sweetwater wanted the deerskin, but she did not accept it. The armband was worth more. The villager could replace the deerskin the next day. She could not replace the shells until her next visit to the Great Sea. The villager considered this for a while. Then he offered both deerskins. They were all he had. Sweetwater looked to her father. The deerskins were soft and rich brown color. With his approval, the trade was completed. At last, all the trading was done. Tonight, she and her father would stay in the village. They would leave tomorrow. Sweetwater's eyes opened wide at the thought. Among the clans of the Muskogee, they could travel for many seasons and never visit the same place twice. In the next village, perhaps she would trade one of the deerskins for some glittery mica or a new kind of bead. But the other one she would keep for herself. The end of that story. That was a story out of Children of the Wind and Water, and it was called The Muskogee Trader. Y'all have a great day.